By the time you're done watching this video, you'll know everything you need to know to install your very own fuel oil burner. From repairing and flaring your copper tubing, to cutting and cleaning chimney pipe like a pro.
Whoa, baby.
Now you're gonna think this next part's really messed up. Yeah, it really makes your lips numb. It's been almost 2 years since we've been able to enjoy some nice, fresh, clean, brand new carpet and a nice, warm, cozy cabin. It's time to get this fuel oil burner working. First off, you want to make sure you empty your fuel tank completely. You want to make sure there's no sludge and water. And be sure to replace your fuel filter every season. Last winter, ice slid off the roof right here and busted our copper fuel line. Luckily, we weren't using it at the time. We had our wood stove hooked up. But this year, I plan on having plenty of fuel oil in here, and I'll make sure it's covered so nothing can break it again. Now, flaring copper tubing is pretty simple. You can get on Amazon and order yourself probably a $20 to $30 kit to be able to do it yourself. I just happen to have this Matco one in my toolbox, so I'll be using this today. All you do is match up the size tubing you have with the size hole on the flaring tool. In our case, we have a 3/8 copper tube. Be sure to snug it down pretty good and leave enough out so when you flare it, you have enough to make a nice mushroom end flare. Oh, and be sure your flare nut is on your tube before flaring the end of your tube, else you'll have to cut it off and redo it. I've done that before. You just snug this down real good and you'll watch it mushroom out. And there you have it. Simple as that. To help ensure you don't have any leaks when putting fittings on for fuel oil, be sure to get yourself some pipe dope. I use this pipe stick. Now you gotta make sure it's for petroleum oil. It says right here for petroleum oil. You can pick it up at any hardware store. Just scrape it off on the male threads, and there you go. Screw it in. This right here is for the copper tubing to butt up against it. You do not need any pipe dope on this, as the copper tubing will kind of crush and seal right around that just perfectly. Now inside the cabin here, I'm connecting the new piece of copper tubing to the existing copper tubing with a union. Pretty simple. And again, remember to put your nuts on the proper way before flaring the tube ends, else you'll have to cut it and redo it. Be sure to snug these up really good.
That's right.
Before hooking this copper tube up to the back of your carburetor, be sure to blow out the copper tubing from the inside all the way out before it's hooked to your tank. If it's plugged up, you'll never know that it's your tube. You'll think it's your carburetor, but it could be your tubing plugged up. Now that our tubing's all installed, let's go ahead and get our chimney installed.
Safety, check. Blades backwards, check. Earmuffs, check. Gloves, I don't have them.
Luckily, we only have one small section to cut and put in. And yes, by turning your wood saw blade backwards, it cuts this just perfectly. A lot of people don't know that, and a lot of people do.
Whoa, baby, baby.
Look at that.
Now it's very important to clean your chimney pipe often, especially if you're burning wood. Yeah, I'd say this one's definitely about due to be cleaned. Now you may wonder why I don't have the long handle sections on my chimney sweeper. Well, that's because I really don't need it, because I'm going to have the chimney completely apart anyway. And the sections, for 3-foot sections, were $15 a piece at the hardware store, so I figured I'd rig something up if I needed it. Be sure to clean everything thoroughly so you can look down it and you don't see no more black buildup on the side of your chimney pipes. It's very important. And if you have a really steep, slippery roof, I definitely suggest a harness or something like that to catch you just in case you fall. But me, I'm off grid, so I don't really worry about that. All this buildup you're seeing in here could cause a fire in your chimney, and that wouldn't be good. So be sure it's perfectly clean. Very, very important to make sure you put these chimney pipe screws in every section of your chimney piping. If it was to fall off in the middle of the night while you are sleeping, everyone in the house will die. Alright, it's the next day and it's not getting any warmer in this cabin. Time to put in some fuel oil and get this thing cranking. One more thing I should add. With your fuel oil tank, be sure not to make it perfectly level. A steel fuel oil drum will naturally create moisture and water within time. You want the opposite end of your fuel outlet to be lower than your fuel outlet end. That way, the water will stay down at the bottom and will not float in to your fuel oil burner, creating a mess. Up here, we use off-road the red Type 2 diesel. It's much cheaper and easier to come by. If you're worried about it freezing, which I've never had a problem, there are some additives you can get for it. The pump I'm using is a hand pump from Harbor Freight. Pretty cheap, but works really good. I made a video on it last year when I purchased it. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to watch that video. Before turning your valve on, you want to be sure to check your carburetor and make sure it's not full of sludge, and there's a filter at the bottom you really want to check. This one I cleaned with some gasoline and then rinsed it back off with some diesel fuel before installing it. Next, you want to remove your inspection cover. It's just a few screws on the top. You want to look inside and make sure everything looks clean. Yep, it's been sitting for over a year and it's not looking good. I'm going to go ahead and use this motor treatment Seafoam Auto Marine Fleet stuff. It works pretty good to help clear stuff out, so I'm just going to saturate it, let it soak for a bit before I tear into it. Now don't let all these carburetor components discourage you. It's not as bad as it looks. Just a few screws you take out and it comes out as a couple different assemblies. Now you're going to think this next part's really messed up, but I really got to do this. So this is where the fuel comes into this carburetor. And when the fuel comes out, being filtered all through the carburetor, it goes through there and in. I got to blow on the end of this. Make sure it's not plugged up inside there. Yeah, you really got to get involved in this kind of stuff to enjoy it. Oh yeah, she good. Yeah, it really makes your lips numb. Now after you clean everything out the best you can, go ahead and put the base back on and hook up your lines. Now this part right here is what allows the fuel oil from the carburetor bowl to go into the fuel oil burner itself. Your temperature knob controls this. The higher you turn it up, the higher this goes up, and that little slot down there, the more it shows, the more fuel goes in it and makes your temperature hotter on your burner. This little needle valve jet allows the fuel to come into the carburetor bowl from the main line. As the floats float up, it makes this needle valve go down, shutting the fuel off, telling it that the bowl has plenty of fuel in it. As the fuel seeps out into the burner, the floats float down, opening this little needle valve, allowing the fuel to fill the bowl. Now when putting your floats back in, be sure your float is clear and goes up and down properly by hand. Before putting the inspection cover back on, you go out and you turn your fuel oil tank on, and you go back in and you make sure your bowl fills up. Be sure to open the fuel valve on your fuel oil burner all the way. Before putting the inspection cover back on, be sure to check, make sure your fuel's going in properly and the bowl's filling up properly. And as soon as it's damp inside the burner itself, you can go ahead and throw in a match and you'll have a fire. Then go ahead and place your inspection cover back on. And one more thing I need to add is be sure your fuel oil burner is level in both directions. That way when your fuel oil disperses inside your fuel oil burner, it goes out level and not all to one side or toward the front or back. You want it level. Oh, would you look at that? It is cooking in here now. Gotta love it. Hope you all enjoyed. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'll be sure to help answer those if I can. Have a great day.